You ever look at a photograph and feel like it's looking right back at you? Like something inside the frame is alive, frozen in time but watching, waiting for the right moment to step forward. Maybe it's just an illusion, a trick of the mind, or maybe sometimes a photograph captures more than just an image. Maybe it catches something it was never supposed to. I'm Detective James Holloway, and I've been a cop for 15 years. I've seen things that make people double-check their locks at night, things that make them sleep with the lights on, but nothing, not one damn thing, prepared me for what I saw in that dark room on December 2nd. It started with a call from dispatch at 7:42 a.m. A neighbor had reported a foul smell coming from apartment 4B in an upscale complex on the Lower East Side. The tenant's name was Victor Ferris, world-renowned photographer, famous for his haunting portraits and avant-garde crime scene recreations. His work blurred the line between art and obsession, celebrated and criticized for its unsettling realism. I had never met the guy, but I had seen his photographs. They had a way of making you feel like you were somewhere you didn't belong, staring at something you weren't supposed to see. When my partner, Detective Emily Carter, and I arrived, the super was waiting for us, keys in hand, his face pale. "It's bad," he muttered, barely meeting our eyes. We stepped inside. The apartment smelled like chemicals and death, the kind of stench that crawls inside your lungs and lingers. The air was thick with the acrid scent of developing fluid, and the blinds were drawn, casting long, unnatural shadows across the room. The place was cluttered with photography equipment, stacks of negatives, and scattered prints. But none of that mattered, not compared to what was in the darkroom. Victor Ferris was sitting in his chair, his head tilted slightly downward, as if he had fallen asleep. His camera was still clutched in his hands, the strap looped around his wrist. His eyes were gone, not just missing, surgically removed, carefully, precisely. The sockets were empty, clean, no sign of struggle. The eyes themselves, those sharp, brilliant blue eyes that had captured some of the world's most haunting images, were floating in the developing tray, staring up at us, clouded over but still full of something I couldn't name. Emily swore under her breath. I just stood there staring, feeling my stomach tighten. The walls of the darkroom were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, overlapping in a chaotic collage. Some were of landscapes, others of city streets, candid shots of strangers. But one series stood out, black and white portraits of a woman. She appeared in a dozen different frames, each one capturing her in various states of movement, walking through a park, looking over her shoulder, staring directly into the camera. There was something strange about her, something off. She didn't look afraid, but she wasn't posing either. It was like she didn't even know she was being watched. I turned to the developing tray, my eyes flicking between the disembodied stare of Victor Ferris and the roll of film beside it, half-developed, submerged in liquid. Carefully, I reached for it, my gloved fingers pulling it from the solution. The last image he had taken, the final thing he saw before someone carved out his eyes. And there she was, the woman. Only this time, she was closer. Too close, as if she knew exactly where the camera was. As if she was looking through the lens, through the frame, through everything, staring directly into me. And then I realized she didn't just look at the camera. She looked at the person holding it. She was looking at Victor, and she was smiling. I've been in homicide long enough to know that the dead don't talk. They leave behind clues, evidence, stories told in blood and broken things. But sometimes, the most unsettling thing about a crime scene isn't what's there, it's what's missing. And standing in that dark room, staring at the final photograph Victor Ferris ever took, I felt it in my bones. The woman in the pictures. She wasn't supposed to exist. Emily was already combing through the apartment, trying to make sense of the mess Ferris had left behind. The place was a hoarder's nightmare. Film canisters stacked in teetering piles, old cameras in various states of disassembly, notebooks filled with scribbled dates and locations. "James," she called, her voice tight. I turned to find her standing near a desk, flipping through a stack of prints. She held one up for me to see. It was another shot of the woman, but this one was different. She wasn't walking, wasn't looking over her shoulder or gazing absently into the distance. She was inside this apartment. The background was unmistakable. The same cluttered bookshelves, the same cracked leather couch we had walked past when we came in. She stood in the center of the frame, her hands at her sides, her expression unreadable. "When do you think he took this?" Emily asked, flipping the print over. No date. No markings. I shook my head. "We'll have to check his camera roll, see if there's a timestamp. But if she was here..." Emily glanced toward the darkroom door, toward Victor's body. We both knew what that meant. She was likely the last person to see him alive. Or worse, she was the one who killed him. I turned back to the developing tray. My gaze locked onto those two floating eyes. Something about them gnawed at me, the way they sat so perfectly still in the liquid, unblinking, unseeing. It was a message. A photographer's most important tool isn't the camera. It's the eye. Whoever did this wanted us to know. They had taken away his ability to see. And that wasn't just murder. That was a statement. Emily started digging through Ferris's desk, flipping through notebooks and sketch pads. "You ever hear any rumors about this guy? Apart from his work being unsettling as hell?" I muttered. "Not much. Genius, eccentric, obsessed with capturing raw truth, whatever the hell that means. He ever mention a muse? Someone he was photographing a lot?" I frowned. "Not that I know of." Emily held up one of the notebooks, its pages filled with erratic, barely legible handwriting. She read aloud. "She is perfect. She is the story. She is the last image they will ever see." I felt my stomach turn. What the hell does that mean? Emily flipped a few more pages, her brow furrowing. "Looks like he was fixated on her. These entries go back months, but there's no name, no location, just vague descriptions and..." She stopped, staring at something near the back of the notebook. I stepped closer. The final entry. She came. "To me tonight. I did not invite her in. I did not tell her where I live. But she found me anyway. She said she wanted to see the darkroom. She said she wanted to be captured the way I see her. She said..." The sentence cut off abruptly. Emily looked at me, her face pale. "James, I don't think he was the one following. I exhaled slowly, staring at the words. She found me anyway. The woman wasn't just a subject. She was something else entirely. And Victor Ferris, he hadn't been the hunter. He had been the prey. Emily and I worked in silence for the next hour, cataloging evidence, trying to piece together a timeline. Ferris's camera contained over 100 images from the last few weeks, but all of them, every single one, were of her. I checked his laptop, searching for emails, messages, anything that could tell us who she was. Nothing. No social media. No correspondence, no saved names or contact information, like she had never existed at all. Then I found the hidden folder. It was buried deep, mislabeled, encrypted. It took me a few tries to crack it, but when I did, a series of videos popped up on the screen. They were all dated within the last 2 months. The first was just static at first, like the camera had been recording with the lens cap on. Then, slowly, an image faded in. The woman, standing at the foot of Victor's bed, motionless, staring at him. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. Victor's voice came from behind the camera, groggy, confused. "How the hell did you get in here?" She didn't answer. The video cut off. Emily whispered, "What the hell are we watching?" I clicked the next file. This time the woman was in the kitchen. The camera angle was strange, low to the ground, like it had been set up deliberately. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking, just past it, looking at Victor. His voice came again, more tense this time. "I don't want you here, you need to leave." Still no response. Then finally she spoke. "You don't understand," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Victor took a shaky breath. "Understand? What?" She smiled. Then, the screen went black. I leaned back, my pulse hammering. There were 12 more videos. and I had a feeling that by the time we reached the last one, we'd know exactly how Victor Ferris died. Or worse, why. I clicked on the third video, bracing myself for whatever came next. The screen flickered and Victor's voice filled the room. This time, he sounded nervous, breathless. The camera was shaking as he set it on a table, adjusting the angle. Why? Are you doing this? His voice was tight, barely controlled. The woman was there again, standing in the dimly lit corner of his apartment. She wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just staring. Her silhouette was distorted by the grainy recording, her face obscured by shadows. Victor took a step back. You wanted me to photograph you? I did. You got what you wanted, so what the hell? Do you want now? She finally moved. A slow, deliberate tilt of the head. You saw me, she whispered. Victor's breathing grew louder. Yeah, that's what I do. I take pictures. It's my job. She stepped forward. The camera caught the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. No, she said softly. Not like them. You saw me. The screen glitched, static distorting the image. For a split second, her face changed, her features blurred, stretched to wrong. Then it was gone, and she was standing exactly where she had been, as if nothing had happened. The video cut out. Emily and I exchanged uneasy glances. She was toying. With him, Emily muttered. I nodded, scrolling to the next file. And he knew it. The fourth video started. Victor was frantic now, the camera shaking as he moved around the room. He was on the phone, his voice panicked. Yeah, I need the police. He stopped, looking toward the door. It was open. Slightly. A sliver of darkness beyond. He stared at it, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. He turned the camera toward himself, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. He was terrified. I think she's inside. Then behind him, movement. A shadow, just barely visible in the doorway. The video ended. A deep, cold dread settled in my stomach. Emily leaned forward, her eyes locked onto the screen. She was in the apartment with him that night. And he knew it, I murmured. We clicked on the next video. This time, Victor was in the darkroom. The red light cast eerie shadows across the walls, making everything look warped and unnatural. His voice was shaking. I don't know who you are, he whispered, but I know what you're doing. You want me to be afraid. You want me to doubt what I see. A pause. Well, congratulations. It's working. Then, a knock. Soft. Deliberate. Victor flinched, spinning toward the sound. The camera followed, catching only the empty doorway. Then something moved in the reflection of the developing trays. The woman, standing just behind him. He turned suddenly, knocking over the camera. The image went sideways, the screen showing, only the floor, then her voice. You don't need your eyes anymore. The screen cut to black. I exhaled, my hands clenched into fists. Emily swallowed hard. James. She was inside the dark room when he died. I looked at the timestamp. It was recorded 6 minutes before his estimated time of death. 6 minutes before someone removed his eyes. Before we could process it, the next video automatically played. At first it was just static. Then slowly, the image came into focus. The dark room. The camera had been set up, facing the developing trays. The red light bathed everything in an eerie glow. Victor was sitting in the chair, his body completely still. His hands were folded in his lap. His head was tilted slightly downward and his eyes were gone. Emily cursed under her breath. The frame held steady for a long, unbearable moment. Then, movement. A figure stepped into view. The woman. But now, she wasn't a silhouette, wasn't a distant, blurred figure in a photograph. She was real. Her hair was damp, clinging to her face. Her lips were slightly parted, her skin almost translucent under the red glow. She looked at the camera, tilting her head. Then slowly she reached into the developing tray. Her fingers curled around Victor's floating eyes. She lifted them, and she smiled. The screen cut to black. Neither Emily nor I spoke for a long time. Finally, she exhaled, shaking her head. She knew we'd find this. I nodded. The woman wasn't just some deranged killer. She was staging this, creating a perfect, visual narrative of her crime. For an audience that didn't yet know they existed, and the most terrifying part, we still had no idea who she was. There are two kinds of killers. The first kind does everything to avoid being caught. They erase their footprints, burn their clothes, clean their mess. They lie, they hide, they prey. No one ever puts the pieces together. Then there's the other kind, the ones who want to be seen. They don't just kill, they create. They design a crime scene like a painter working on a canvas, arranging every detail with meticulous care. They want us to look, to study, to understand the story they're telling, and that's exactly what we were dealing with. She wasn't covering her tracks. She was putting on a show. Emily and I sat in the precinct's dimly lit conference room, staring at the crime scene photos spread across the table. The images of Victor Ferris, the developing trays, the eyes, they were burned into my mind now, but it was the pictures of her that made my skin crawl. The woman who didn't exist. The woman Ferris had been obsessed with. We had run her face through every possible database, facial recognition, missing persons, even international records. Nothing. It was like she had never been born. Emily tapped her pen against the table, her face tight with frustration. People don't just appear out of nowhere, James. She's got to be somewhere in the system. I rubbed my temples, my head pounding. Unless she doesn't want to be found. We had detectives combing through Ferris's past, trying to track down anyone who might have known about this mystery woman. But so far, every lead was a dead end. Then the lab report came in. I grabbed the envelope from the evidence tech and ripped it open. The results were from the developing tray, the liquid that Ferris's eyes had been floating in. I expected standard darkroom chemicals, but there was something else. Blood, not Ferris's. Emily read over my shoulder. Type AB negative. Less than 1% of the population has that blood type. I frowned. So if we can find a match, we find her. But that was easier said than done. There were thousands of names in the database. We needed something else, a connection. And then, at 2:43 a.m., we got one. The radio crackled. A uniformed officer's voice came through, strained and urgent. We got another one. Emily and I were out the door before he even finished his sentence. The address led us to an abandoned apartment on the west side of town. As soon as we stepped inside, the air felt wrong. The first thing I saw was the camera. It was set up on a tripod, pointed at the center of the room. A single chair sat in the frame, like a staged portrait. Then I saw the body. A man, mid-40s, slumped in the chair. Eyes missing. But unlike Ferris, this one wasn't left sitting naturally. He was posed. His arms had been arranged to hold something, a photograph balanced carefully between his fingers. Emily bent down, using her gloved hand to lift the picture. Her breath caught. It was a black and white portrait of Ferris. Taken years ago. I felt a deep, cold dread settle in my stomach. She's recreating old cases. Emily looked up at me, her expression sharp. This isn't just about Ferris. She's reenacting unsolved murders. And suddenly, everything clicked. We weren't just looking for a killer. We were looking for a historian of death. Someone who was reconstructing the perfect visual record of unsolved crimes. A gallery of murder. And we had no idea where she would strike next. I always thought I understood killers. I thought I knew how they worked, what drove them, what made them tick. But this one was different. She wasn't killing out of rage or impulse. She wasn't leaving behind chaos. She was curating. Every detail was deliberate, every crime scene a perfect recreation. A photograph brought to life in the most horrifying way possible. And we were running out of time. The second victim, identified as Daniel Holt, was a former crime reporter. He had covered some of the city's most notorious unsolved cases, including one that looked eerily similar to his own murder. The 1998 blind man case had left police baffled for decades. A journalist was found in his home, eyes surgically removed, seated just like Holt had been. Only now, we weren't dealing with an unknown killer. We were dealing with someone who wanted us to see their work. Emily and I stood in the precinct, staring at the wall where we had pinned up every crime scene photo, every note, every link we could find. The pattern was clear now. She was selecting her victims based on old, unsolved cases, photographing death the way it should have been seen. And then we got the call that made my stomach drop. There was another body, but this time, it wasn't staged. It was a warning. The victim was a private investigator named Leon Tate. Unlike the others, his body was found dumped in an alleyway, rushed, messy. His eyes were still intact, but his face was covered in deep scratches like someone had tried to erase him. His camera was missing. Emily flipped through his files. He was hired by a family 5 months ago to look into a disappearance. I scanned the report. Sophie Langley. My heart nearly stopped. It was her, the woman in Ferris's photos. She was real, I whispered. And now she's missing. The pieces clicked together so fast I could barely think. Ferris had been obsessed with her because she was already a ghost, a woman who had vanished without a trace, someone Tate had been investigating, and someone didn't want us finding her. I grabbed my coat. We need to find out where Tate was last seen. We pulled traffic camera footage, checked his last known location, pieced together his movements. The trail led us to an old storage facility on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where people disappear. The storage unit was unlocked. Inside, a dim red light flickered overhead, and in the center of the space, a chair, a camera, a backdrop, a studio for the dead. Emily found a table stacked with old photographs. James, these aren't just crime scene recreations. I stepped closer, my stomach twisting. They were original crime scene photos, decades worth. She wasn't just copying history. She had access to police evidence. And then the camera flashed. We spun around. A figure stood in the doorway holding a camera. The woman, Sophie Langley, or whatever was left of her. Her eyes were glassy, vacant. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the focus like she wasn't even seeing us, just the composition of the frame. "You found me," she whispered. Emily drew her gun. "Put the camera down." Sophie didn't move. "It's not about me," she said. Then she turned the camera toward herself and snapped a picture. The flash blinded us for half a second. When our vision cleared, she was gone. We searched for hours. No trace of her, no footprints, no sign she had ever been there at all. The case remained open, but there was nothing more we could do. No prints, no leads, just an empty chair and a camera left behind. Weeks later, I received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single black and white photograph of me, taken from behind as I sat at my desk, watching, waiting. The woman in the photos was never caught, and somewhere out there she's still watching, still waiting for the perfect shot. I don't know what woke me first, the cold air crawling over my skin or the wetness soaking through my shirt. I lay still, my mind swimming in fog, my breath coming slow and shallow. Something felt wrong. I could hear the faint hum of a refrigerator, the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city, the quiet tick of a clock. My fingers twitched against the hardwood floor, and that's when I noticed the stickiness clinging to my hands, the coppery scent thick in my nose. Blood. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. My breath caught in my throat as I forced my eyes open. Dim light filtered through the blinds, painting long, pale stripes across the ceiling. The room smelled sharp, metallic, unmistakable. I turned my head, and the world tilted sickeningly. She was right there beside me. A woman sprawled on the floor, her face turned toward me, her eyes open but lifeless. The dark stain beneath her spread outward, seeping into the wood, into the air, into my skin. Her blonde hair clung to her cheek, sticky with drying blood. I swallowed against the bile rising in my throat, my pulse hammering against my skull. Scrambled back, my hands slipping, my breath coming fast now. The blood smeared across my arms, my clothes, so much of it. My chest tightened. My fingers dug into the floor as I tried to steady myself. I needed to think, needed to breathe. My gun, my badge, my phone. I reached for my holster, but it was empty. My belt was there, my shirt wrinkled and stained, but my weapon was gone. My badge was missing. My phone. I patted my pockets, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Nothing. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to piece together how I got here, but my memory was a black void. I tried to pull something from the haze, where I had been last night, what I had done, who this woman was, but all I found was static. The last thing I could remember clearly was yesterday morning. Coffee in my office, the sound of my partner Alvarez laughing at something on his phone. I had been working a case, a missing woman, something about old police records, but then said nothing, no. There had to be something, a bar, a drink. Faces swam through my mind, fleeting and indistinct. Think. I forced myself to move, my limbs shaking as I pushed up onto my knees. I looked at the woman again, my stomach twisting. She was young, maybe mid-30s, dressed in a simple blouse and jeans. No signs of a struggle that I could see, no overturned furniture, no shattered glass, just her, just me. My breath came in shallow gasps. The blood on my hands wasn't just hers. It was on my sleeves, my collar, drying in the creases of my palms. How much of it was mine? A sound outside. I froze. Footsteps in the hallway. A door creaking open. Panic surged through me, cold and electric. I couldn't be here when someone found her. I needed time. I needed answers. I stumbled to my feet, my body sluggish and unfamiliar, like I was moving underwater. My legs threatened to give out beneath me as I staggered toward the door. A quick glance around. The apartment was small, neat. A desk by the window, papers stacked beside a laptop. A bookshelf lined with crime novels and legal texts. A framed photo of the woman, with an older man, her father, a brother. I couldn't stay to find out. I reached the door just as the footsteps outside hesitated. Someone was about to knock. I didn't think. I acted. I yanked the door open and shoved past whoever was standing there, ignoring their startled shout. My feet hit the hallway floor and I forced myself forward, down the stairs, out into the night air. The city swallowed me. Neon lights flickering, car horns blaring. I kept moving. I didn't know where I was going, but one thing was clear. I had blood on my hands, a body behind me, and no idea how I got there. The night air hit me like a slap, sharp and cold against my sweat-drenched skin. I barely noticed. My legs moved on instinct, one foot in front of the other, fast, but not frantic. Running would attract attention. I didn't know how much time I had before someone called the cops, before sirens started screaming through the streets. The city pulsed around me, flashing headlights, the scent of rain on asphalt, the distant rumble of the subway beneath my feet. Everything felt too loud, too bright, too real. The blood on my clothes was drying now, tacky against my skin. A grim reminder that no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't outrun what I had just seen. The woman, dead, next to me. The images flickered in my mind like a broken film reel. The pale skin, the glassy eyes, the dark pool soaking into the floor, and me, covered in her blood. I forced my breathing to steady as I turned a corner onto a quieter street, my hands shoved deep into my pockets, my shoulders hunched. Keep moving. Keep thinking. My gun was gone, my badge, my phone. Someone had taken them, or I had lost them in whatever the hell had happened last night. My memory was a gaping void, an abyss where hours should have been. How did I get to that apartment? Who was she? I tried to pull something from the haze, but the more I reached, the more it slipped through my fingers. The last thing I remembered was yesterday morning. Alvarez in the office, a fresh case file on my desk. A missing woman. A name that tugged at something deep in my brain. I needed answers. I needed to find Alvarez. I turned onto another street, scanning my surroundings. I couldn't go home. If I was already a suspect, my apartment would be crawling with uniforms soon enough. My car was probably still parked outside the precinct, and showing up there was suicide. That left one option. I needed to get off the grid. I ducked into an alley, pulling my jacket tighter against the chill. My reflection stared back at me from a streaked window. Haunted eyes, blood-stained collar, a face I barely recognized. I was a detective, but right now I looked like a man running from a crime. I needed a burner phone. I needed clean clothes. I needed a goddamn plan. I checked my pockets again, searching for anything useful. A few crumpled bills, my pocket knife. No wallet, no ID, perfect. I made my way toward a 24-hour laundromat on the corner. Inside, the hum of machines filled the space, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A woman sat in the corner, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing at me. Good. I grabbed a hoodie and a pair of jeans from the donation bin in the back. Not my size, but they'd do. In the cramped restroom, I peeled off my blood-soaked clothes, stuffing them into a plastic bag. The sight of my own skin made my stomach lurch. Dried streaks of red clung to my arms, my chest, the back of my neck. I scrubbed my hands under the faucet until the water ran clear. But no matter how much I washed, I still felt dirty, like the blood had soaked into my skin, into my bones. I pulled on the hoodie, shoving the hood up over my head. One problem solved. Now I needed a phone. There was a gas station a few blocks away. I kept my head down as I walked, avoiding eye contact, fighting the paranoia creeping up my spine. Any second, someone would recognize me. A squad car would roll past. I'd hear my name over the radio. Detective James Holloway, wanted for murder. I gritted my teeth and kept walking. At the gas station, I grabbed a prepaid phone and paid in cash. The cashier barely looked at me. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe no one knew yet. Or maybe the walls were just closing in slower than I expected. Outside, I ducked into a bus stop shelter and powered up the phone. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale glow over my hands. I hesitated. Alvarez was my best bet. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was him. But if the cops already knew about the body, he'd be under orders to bring me in. I clenched. My jaw undialed anyway. The phone rang once, twice, then Holloway. Alvarez's voice was thick with sleep, groggy but alert. I swallowed hard. It's me. A pause. Then a sharp inhale. Where the hell are you? I don't know, I admitted, but I need your help. Jesus, James, they're looking for you. My stomach turned. They think I did it. Another pause. Longer this time. Did you? The question hit like a slap. I opened my mouth, then shut it, because the truth was, I didn't know. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The weight of Alvarez's question hung in the air. Did you? My grip tightened on the burner phone, my knuckles going white. My mouth was dry. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I don't remember, I finally said, the words tasting like rust on my tongue. Alvarez exhaled sharply. I could hear him shifting, probably sitting up in bed, the rustle of sheets in the background. His voice was quieter when he spoke again, more cautious. Where are you? Nowhere good. I glanced around the empty bus stop, the neon glow of a liquor store sign flickering in and out. I need to see you in person. You don't understand, Holloway. The whole damn department is looking for you. Your name's all over the radio. Someone found the body less than an hour ago. His voice dropped even lower. She was a journalist, man. That hit like a sledgehammer to the ribs. A journalist. The pieces started shifting in my head, a puzzle I couldn't quite solve yet. I ran, a hand over my face, feeling the stubble on my jaw, the grit of dried sweat. Who was she? I asked. Alvarez hesitated. I could almost hear him debating whether to tell me. Rachel Delaney. She was looking into something, an old case. Something about corruption in the department. The captain's keeping it quiet, but everyone knows she was onto something. The word sent a cold shock through me. Yesterday, the case I was working. A missing woman. Something about old records. Was Rachel Delaney investigating the same thing I was? If she was, then maybe I hadn't just ended up in that apartment by chance. Alvarez was still talking. They've got security footage, James. From her building. It shows you walking in last night. I sucked in a breath. My mind reeled. Alvarez, I don't... It only shows you going in. His voice was tight. It doesn't show you leaving. The world tilted. I pressed a hand against the cold metal of the bus stop bench to steady myself. I don't remember being there, I muttered. Alvarez sighed, long and slow. I don't know what to tell you, man. You need to turn yourself in. No. The word shot out before I could think. Not yet. James, I need time. I need to figure this out. My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to sound steady. I swear to you, Alvarez, I didn't kill her. Silence again. Then, you got 8 hours, he said, his voice grim. After that, I can't protect you. You call me when you know something. Click. The line went dead. I let the phone drop to my lap, staring at it. My head was a mess, but one thing was clear. Someone was setting me up, and I was running out of time. I ditched the bus stop and kept moving. The city felt different now, like the walls were pressing in. Every passing car made my shoulders tense. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. Rachel Delaney, a journalist investigating corruption, a case I barely remembered looking into, a night missing from my mind. I had to get back to that apartment. It was risky, maybe the dumbest thing I'd done all night, but I needed to see it again, needed to find something that made sense. I took the long way back, staying off main streets, cutting through alleys where I could. The city never really slept, but in these quiet hours it felt like a different world. Rachel's apartment building was in a quiet part of Midtown, a 4-story walk-up with a rusted fire escape and an old security camera mounted above the entrance. I lingered across the street, hidden in the shadows between 2 parked cars, scanning for anything unusual. No squad cars, no uniforms. But that didn't mean it was safe. I crossed fast, moving like I belonged there. The front door had crime scene tape across it, but I knew these old buildings, there was always another way in. The alley. I slipped around back, heart pounding, and found the fire escape ladder. It was old, stiff with rust, but it held my weight. I climbed slow, careful not to make noise. 2nd floor. 3rd. Rachel's window was right there, unlocked. My breath caught. Someone had been sloppy, or someone wanted me to come back. Too late to turn back now. I slid the window open and eased, inside. The air was thick with the scent of death, but beneath it, something else. Perfume, cheap whiskey, old paper. I took a step, my foot pressing against the dried blood on the floor. The crime scene had been processed, but the apartment still felt wrong. Not just because of the death, but because of something else. Something just beyond my grasp. Moved toward her desk. Stacks of notes, files, scribbled names. My fingers skimmed over them, searching for something. Anything. There. A name. Detective Raymond Holloway. I went still. My father's name. The floor creaked behind me. I turned too. Late. Pain exploded in the back of my skull and everything went black. Pain. A deep, throbbing ache radiated from the back of my skull, spreading in slow, pulsing waves. My head felt like it had been split open. My vision swam as I blinked against the darkness, trying to remember where I was. Rachel Delaney's apartment. Had found her notes. My father's name. Then, nothing. I tried to move, but something tugged at my wrists. My arms were behind me, bound. My ankles, too. A zip tie bit into my skin. My breathing hitched, my chest tightening with the sudden realization. I wasn't alone. Somewhere in the dark, footsteps scraped against the floor. Slow, deliberate. A presence lingered just outside my vision, waiting. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay even. If this is a robbery, you picked the wrong guy. Silence. Then, a chuckle. Low, amused, familiar. You always did have a smart mouth, kid. The voice sent a cold shiver through my spine. My stomach twisted in a way that had nothing to do with the pain in my head. I knew that voice. A shadow moved in the dim light filtering through the blinds. A figure stepped closer, and my pulse slammed against my ribs as my worst suspicions were confirmed. Detective Raymond Holloway. My father. He was older now, gray streaking his once black hair, his face lined from years of wear. But his eyes, cold, sharp, unreadable, hadn't changed. He was dressed in dark slacks and a button-down, sleeves rolled up, exposing the faded ink of an old Marine Corps tattoo. He looked down at me like I was nothing more than a loose end. "Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't smile, didn't speak for a long moment, just watched me, sizing me up the way a hunter watches a wounded animal. Then he crouched down beside me, his knee cracking as he bent. "You were always a smart kid, James, just not smart enough." The words carried a weight I didn't fully understand. I swallowed hard. "You set me up." He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head like he was disappointed in me. "You did this to yourself, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Rachel Delaney was digging into things that should have stayed buried, and you..." He let out a dry laugh. "You were just dumb enough to follow the breadcrumbs." I stared at him, my blood turning to ice. Rachel had been investigating something, an old case. A cover-up, and my father, my own damn father, was the reason she was dead. A slow, burning rage started to rise in my chest, overtaking the fear. "You killed her," I said, my voice flat. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "You don't understand, son." His voice was measured, calm, like he was explaining something simple, something inevitable. "Some things are bigger than you, bigger than me." I shook my head, my breaths coming faster. "You murdered an innocent woman." "She wasn't innocent." His tone sharpened. "She was digging into something dangerous, something that could have destroyed everything." I clenched my fists behind me, the zip tie digging in deeper. "Like what?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation. Then, he sighed, rubbing a hand over his face like he was exhausted. "It doesn't matter now." He stood, reaching into his jacket. The unmistakable glint of a gun caught the light. Panic clawed up my throat. "Dad." His expression didn't change. "I'm sorry, James, but you weren't supposed to be part of this." My heartbeat thundered. I yanked at the restraints, adrenaline surging through me, but the zip ties held firm. My father raised the gun. I was going to die. Then, a sound from the hallway. Footsteps, a voice calling out, "NYPD, we know you're in there." My father's head snapped toward the door, his grip tightening on the gun. His jaw clenched. I took my chance. With everything I had, I kicked my legs forward, slamming into his knee. He staggered back with a sharp curse, the gun jerking upward. A shot exploded through the room, deafening in the small space. Pain seared through my shoulder as the bullet grazed me, but I didn't stop. I twisted, bringing my arms under me, using the momentum to push up onto my knees. The door burst open. Light flooding in, the silhouette of a gun raised. "I freeze!" Alvarez. Relief slammed into me like a truck. My father's eyes darted between us, his chest rising and falling fast. For the first time in my life, I saw something like uncertainty in his expression. Then, without hesitation, he turned the gun on himself. "No!" I shouted, but it was too late. The gun went off. My father crumpled to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Silence. My breath came in ragged gasps, my entire body trembling. My father's body lay still, his gun slipping from his fingers. Alvarez moved fast, cutting the zip tie from my wrists. My hands were shaking as I clutched my bleeding shoulder. I couldn't take my eyes off my father's lifeless face. James. Alvarez's voice was cautious. You okay? I didn't answer, because I wasn't. Not even close. The world blurred at the edges, my vision swimming as I stared at the body on the floor. My father, Detective Raymond Holloway. I had seen death before, more times than I could count. Homicides, suicides, accidents that didn't look like accidents. But nothing prepared me for this. Nothing prepared me for the sight of my father's body sprawled in a pool of his own blood, the gun slipping from his lifeless fingers. The coppery stench of it filled my lungs. My shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed me, but the pain barely registered. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears. All I could feel was the crushing weight pressing down on my chest. Alvarez was speaking, but his words were muffled, distant. James, look at me. A hand gripped my shoulder, not the injured one. I finally forced myself to blink, to turn my head toward him. His face was tight with concern, but his gun was still drawn. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, tried again. He was going to kill me. I know. Alvarez exhaled sharply, glancing down at my father. Jesus, Holloway. You had me scared for a second. I gave a hollow laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, me too. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. More voices. Uniforms flooded in, weapons raised, eyes scanning the room until they landed on my father's body. The tension in the air shifted. Someone radioed for an ambulance, but I knew there was no point. My father was beyond saving. The next hour passed in a haze. Paramedics checked my shoulder, wrapped it tight, asked if I wanted to go to the hospital. I refused. The captain arrived, his face a storm of unreadable emotions as he took in the scene. I was questioned, but Alvarez did most of the talking, filling in the gaps I couldn't. The security footage, the missing hours, the setup, and my father, at the center of it all. I sat on the edge of the couch while forensics swept the apartment, my hands clasped between my knees, my mind replaying everything over and over. Rachel Delaney had been onto something buried deep. My father had spent his life upholding the law, or so I had believed. But he had secrets. And when Rachel got too close, he silenced her. And when I got too close, he was ready to do the same. I looked down at my hands. They were still stained with dried blood. His blood. I flexed my fingers, but the feeling wouldn't go away. The blood never washes off. They cleared me of the murder. The evidence was there. Rachel had been investigating my father, not me. His involvement in her death was all over her notes, hidden in files that had been missed during the first sweep. Alvarez vouched for me. The department wanted it buried fast. A decorated detective, a father taking his own life rather than facing the truth. That was the story they ran with. The official report barely scratched the surface. I was reinstated, but something had changed. The precinct felt different. The stares lingered longer. Conversation stopped when I walked into the room. People talked. Couldn't blame them. My father had been a legend once, respected, feared, and now his name would always be tied to corruption, to murder, to the things hidden beneath the surface. And I would always be the son who didn't see it coming. A week later, I stood in front of his grave. The rain came down in sheets, soaking through my jacket, but I barely felt it. The headstone was simple. Raymond Holloway, beloved father and husband. I let out a bitter laugh. Hell of a legacy, huh? The cemetery was empty except for me. No funeral, no crowd of officers standing in silence. Just me and the rain and the ghosts of the past. I pulled a flask from my pocket, unscrewed the cap with stiff fingers. "I don't know how much of you was real," I murmured. "Or how much was a lie. But I can't fix it now, can I?" I took a slow sip, the burn of whiskey grounding me for a moment. I had spent my whole life trying to follow in his footsteps, trying to be the kind of detective he was. Now I didn't even know who that man had been. I crouched down, staring at the name carved into the stone. "I'm not you," I said quietly, "and I never will be." Then I stood, turned, and walked away. The blood never washes off, but maybe, just maybe, I could learn to live with it. You ever hear something you know shouldn't be there? Something that makes the hair on your arm stand up because it doesn't fit, because it shouldn't exist in the quiet safety of your own home? That's how it started for me. A sound. A scream. The kind that freezes your blood and makes your heart beat too hard against your ribs. The kind that sticks to the walls long after the echo fades. I wasn't always like this, jumping at every noise, questioning what was real. Before all of this, I was just another person living in a nameless apartment complex in a city where neighbors don't ask questions. I worked nights at a bookstore downtown, stacking shelves and listening to true crime podcasts to pass the time. I liked the routine, the quiet, the simple act of closing the register at the end of the night and heading home to my tiny one-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Safe, predictable, ordinary. I never paid attention to my neighbors. People moved in, people moved out. I barely glanced at the doors in the hallway as I passed by. There was an old woman down the hall who always carried a little dog under her arm, a man who smoked on his balcony at odd hours of the night. But beyond that, the building was just a backdrop to my life, a setting I didn't think about. Until that night. I had just gotten home from work, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on my shoulders. It was late, past midnight, and the hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's burned dinner. My key turned in the lock with a familiar click, and as I stepped inside, the warmth of my apartment wrapped around me. I kicked off my shoes, let my bag drop to the floor, and made my way to the kitchen, already thinking about the leftovers waiting in the fridge. That's when I heard it, a scream, muffled but desperate, the kind of sound that clawed its way under your skin. It came from the apartment next door. I froze, my hand still on the refrigerator handle. For a second I thought I imagined it. The walls in this building were thick, too thick for sound to carry like that. But then I heard it again, a choked, raw sob like someone was gasping for breath. My stomach twisted. I turned toward the wall, pressing my ear against it. Silence, the kind that hummed, unnatural and heavy. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my brain was playing tricks on me after hours of listening to crime stories. But then, another sound. Not a scream this time, but movement. The unmistakable shuffle of feet. Someone was in there. My neighbor had moved out weeks ago. The unit was supposed to be empty. I had seen the landlord hauling out furniture, heard the distant echo of cleaning crews in the hallway. No one had moved in. I backed away from the wall, my heart beat a drum in my ears. Rationality fought with instinct. Maybe the landlord had rented it out already. Maybe someone was in there unpacking. But why would they be screaming? I hesitated, then made my way to my front door. The hallway was empty, stretching in both directions under the dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights. My neighbor's door looked just as it always had, ordinary, still. I stepped closer, pressing my hand against the cool surface, held my breath. Nothing. Just as I was about to turn away, the scream came again, clearer this time, more frantic. It was close, too close, just on the other side of this door. My hand clenched into a fist before I could stop myself, and I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Hello? Is someone in there? Silence. I stood there for what felt like forever, waiting, listening. A soft creak. A shift of, wait. Someone was standing just on the other side. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I heard something, I said, my voice unsteady. Is everything okay? Nothing. No response. I took a step back, unease curling tight in my stomach. If someone was in trouble, they weren't answering. If someone was in there at all. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. I could call the landlord, but he wouldn't answer this late. The police? What would I even tell them? That I heard something in an apartment that was supposed to be empty, that I swore I could feel someone standing behind this door? I took another step back. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe exhaustion was messing with my mind. But then, a sound that sent ice down my spine. Not a scream this time. Laughter. Soft. Distorted. Wrong. Like it was coming from a recording. I turned and practically ran back into my apartment, slamming the door shut behind me. My breathing was too loud in the silence, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I locked the door, my hands shaking. I stood there waiting, listening. But the apartment next door stayed silent. After a while, I told myself I was being ridiculous, that the mind could play tricks on you late at night, that it was just some weird noise from another unit, maybe. The pipes, maybe the wind. I almost believed it until the next night when the screams came again. And this time they said my name. The next night I tried to pretend everything was normal. I followed my routine, went to work, restocked shelves, let the hours slip by in the artificial glow of fluorescent lights. I kept my mind busy with the simple, repetitive tasks of my job, scanning barcodes, straightening books, wiping the counter clean. I didn't listen to my usual crime podcasts. I didn't let my thoughts wander back to the apartment next door, to the voice that had called my name. But the moment I stepped into the hallway of my building, the air felt heavier, like the silence itself had weight. I had lived here for almost 2 years, but suddenly the space felt unfamiliar, stretched thin. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering slightly, casting long, uncertain shadows against the walls. I told myself not to look at the door next to mine. I looked anyway. Nothing had changed. It was just a door. A plain, beige slab of wood like every other one in the building. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something on the other side was watching me, listening. My own door felt like salvation, and I rushed inside, locking it behind me. The silence in my apartment wrapped around me, thick and expectant. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, tried to ignore the creeping sensation crawling up my spine. I turned on the TV, let the voices of strangers fill the space. Something, anything, to make the quiet feel less like a living thing pressing in on me. An hour passed. Then 2. I almost started to believe I had imagined it all, and then, the first scream. I froze, my fingers gripping the edge of the couch. It was muffled but desperate, the same as the night before. The kind of sound that made something deep inside you panic, made you want to run even though you didn't know where. I turned the TV down, my breath coming too fast. Another scream. Got up slowly, my feet hesitant against the floor. Moved toward the wall, I pressed my ear against it. The sound was clearer tonight. Not just screaming, but crying, gasping, a voice breaking apart in terror. I clenched my jaw, nausea twisting my stomach. Then the worst part. A voice. Low, almost soothing. Male. Whispering something I couldn't make out. I jerked away from the wall, my pulse hammering against my ribs. My hand was shaking as I reached for my phone. I didn't hesitate this time. I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, routine. 911. What's your emergency? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. I live in an apartment complex and I keep hearing screaming from the unit next door. It's supposed to be empty. A pause. Just long enough to make me feel stupid. You're hearing screaming right now? Yes. I turned back to the wall, expecting another cry, another plea for help. But the moment the dispatcher spoke, the apartment next door went silent. Completely, utterly silent. I squeezed my eyes shut, frustration tightening in my chest. It happens at night. It happened last night, too. Did you see anyone enter the apartment? No, but I knocked. No one answered, but I swear someone was inside. Another pause. Is there a property manager we can contact? Yeah, but it's late. I don't think he'll... A sound from the other side of the wall, not a scream this time, a tap, a single, deliberate knock. I sucked in a breath, my body frozen. Another knock, closer to where I stood, like whoever or whatever was in there knew exactly where I was. I think someone's in there, I whispered into the phone. I think they know I'm listening. We're sending officers. To check it out, the dispatcher said. Stay inside, don't engage. I barely heard her. The tapping against the wall started again, rhythmic, slow. My own heartbeat seemed to fall into step with it. Then, something new. A low crackling sound, like an old tape being rewound. And then, a voice. Not screaming, not whispering. A woman's voice. My voice. Static distorted it, warping the edges, but it was me, saying something I had no memory of ever saying. Please stop. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. My stomach turned to ice. It wasn't possible. I had never said those words. I stumbled away from the wall. My breath coming too fast, too shallow. The knocking stopped. The tape whirred again, more static. Another piece of audio spitting out like something old and rotting being dragged back into the light. My voice, breaking, sobbing. I dropped the phone. The knock came again. Louder. Then silence. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Somewhere far away, I heard the dispatcher's voice, tinny and distant from the phone on the floor. Ma'am? Ma'am, are you still there? A creak. The sound of a doorknob turning. Not mine. The apartment next door. I grabbed my phone, scrambled away from the wall, my back hitting my front door as panic took over. I clutched the phone with both hands, my voice barely working. There's someone in there. My voice cracked. They just opened the door. Stay where you are, the dispatcher said firmly. Officers are on the way. But the apartment next door stayed silent. I forced myself to my feet, every muscle in my body screaming at me to move, to leave, to run. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen in place, listening. Nothing. Then, just as I started to think it was over, just as I let out the breath I had been holding, a shadow moved under the crack of my front door. Something was standing in the hallway. Something that shouldn't exist. The moment I saw the shadow shift beneath my door, my breath caught in my throat. It was slow, deliberate, the outline of 2 feet standing just beyond the threshold. I couldn't move, couldn't think, just stood there, my back pressed against the cold wall, my phone clutched so tightly in my hands that my fingers ached. Ma'am? The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker, distant, unreal. Officers are en route. Can you still see the suspect? The shadow didn't move. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. There's someone outside my door. My voice barely rose above a whisper, like speaking too loudly would make it real. They're just standing there. Silence from the hallway. Then, a sound. Not knocking this time. Not even the distorted, tape-recorded whispers. Breathing. Slow. Measured. Just on the other side of the door. I clenched my jaw, every muscle in my body locking up. The air in my apartment felt thick, suffocating, like the walls were closing in. My brain screamed at me to run, to do something. But I was paralyzed, caught between the primal instinct to hide and the rational part of me that kept repeating, this can't be happening. This isn't real. But it was real. The shadow shifted again. The breathing grew quieter, as if whoever, or whatever was out there, was pressing their face against the wood. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the world to reset itself. To make this stop, then click. The doorknob turned. I let out a strangled gasp, pushing myself harder against the wall as if I could sink into it. disappear. The lock held, but I heard the metal mechanism groan under pressure like someone was testing it. Slowly, patiently, as if they had all the time in the world. The dispatcher's voice cut through my haze of panic. "Ma'am, stay calm. Officers, we'll be there any second. Are all your doors locked?" I couldn't answer. My mouth wouldn't work. I was too focused on the shadow. Because suddenly, it was gone. 1 second, it was there. The next, the space beneath my door was empty. But I didn't hear footsteps. No retreating sound, no indication that whoever had been standing there had left. It was just gone, like they had never been there at all. I stayed frozen for another full minute, listening, waiting for the next sound, the next impossible thing. But the hallway was silent. My apartment was silent. A knock. I flinched violently, my pulse slamming, against my ribs, then realized it was coming from my phone. "Ma'am, are you there?" I exhaled shakily, finally finding my voice. Yeah, I think they left." "The officers just arrived," she said. "Stay where you are." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I forced myself forward, toward the door. I pressed my eye to the peephole, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The hallway was empty. No shadow, no movement. Just the 2 uniformed officers standing near the elevator, scanning the corridor with practiced, unreadable expressions. I exhaled, finally feeling like I could breathe again. My hands were still shaking as I unbolted the lock and opened the door. The officers turned as I stepped into the hallway. The air felt colder out here, stale and heavy, as if it had absorbed something it shouldn't have. One of the officers, a tall man with sharp eyes and a tired face, gave me a small nod. "Miss Carter?" I nodded. He glanced at my door, then at the unit next to mine. "We received a disturbance call. You reported screams coming from this apartment?" I swallowed. "Yeah, last night too." He nodded again, exchanging a look. With his partner, a younger woman with dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She was already moving toward the door, testing the handle. "Locked. I don't think anyone's supposed to be in there," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. But I heard them, I know I did. The younger officer knocked. "Police," she called. "If someone's inside, we need you to open the door." Nothing. She tried again. Silence. Then, without turning, she asked, "Who lives here?" I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how cold the hallway felt against my skin. "No one. My old neighbor moved out weeks ago." The older officer frowned. "When's the last time you saw anyone enter?" I hesitated. Never. Not since the last tenant left. But I heard someone. I cut myself off, unsure of how to explain the tape recorder, my own voice echoing through the walls, the impossible sounds that didn't belong. I suddenly felt stupid, like maybe this whole thing was in my head, like I had been so deep in my own fears that I created something that wasn't really there. The officers exchanged another glance before the older one pulled out a key ring. "We'll check it out," I nodded, stepping back as he unlocked the door. My breath caught in my throat as it swung open, revealing nothing. An empty apartment. No furniture. No lights. Just a hollow space of bare floors and white walls, untouched by time. No signs of life. No signs of anyone. I blinked, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. "No, that's not possible." The female officer stepped inside, scanning the room with a flashlight. "You said you heard screaming?" I did. My voice sounded desperate. I heard voices, movement. Someone tried to open my door. I stopped, because something was in there. Not a person. Something small. The officer's flashlight landed on it at the same time I saw it. A recorder. Old. Heavy. The kind that played cassette tapes. It sat on the bare floor in the middle of the room, positioned carefully, deliberately, like someone had left it there on purpose. The officers moved toward it, but I stayed where I was, my feet refusing to cross the threshold. I already knew what was on it. I knew what it would play. The officer hit rewind. A soft whir filled the silence. Then he pressed play, static. Then, a scream. My scream. My breath stopped. The officers turned to look at me, confused, but I couldn't speak. Because I had never screamed like that before, not yet. The scream crackled through the old recorder, warping at the edges, distorted but unmistakable. It was me. My voice, raw, terrified, a sound ripped straight from a nightmare. But I had never screamed like that. Not yet. The sound echoed in the empty apartment, bouncing off the bare walls, filling the hollow space with something unnatural, something that didn't belong in a place untouched by time. The officers froze, their eyes flicking between me and the recorder as if trying to reconcile. The impossible. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then the tape kept playing, static, a low, crackling hum. Then my voice again, this time broken, gasping. Please, please, stop. A sob. A horrible, wet, choking sound like someone struggling to breathe through pain. And then, another. Voice, a man's voice, low, calm, detached. Shh, no one can hear you. I stumbled back against the door frame as if the words had struck me like a physical blow. My stomach twisted violently, my vision tunneling. I had never said those things. I had never been in this room. But somehow, I was on that tape. Somehow, this was a recording of something that hadn't happened yet, something that was going to happen. I saw the female officer swallow, her fingers tightening around her flashlight. Her face was unreadable, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her body stiffened at the sound of my voice pleading for mercy. The older officer turned to me, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Carter, are you sure you've never been in this apartment before? The question hit me like a slap. My mouth opened, then closed. A denial sat on my tongue, but the words felt fragile, uncertain. No, never. I don't even know who used to live here. He studied me for a long moment, then crouched beside the recorder, inspecting it with gloved hands. It's old. Tape deck's been modified, though. He pressed a few buttons, watching the wheels spin inside. Not just a player, it records too. His partner frowned. So someone recorded this before she heard it? Neither of them wanted to say what we were all thinking, that the recording hadn't happened before. It was from the future. The older officer pressed stop, the silence in the room somehow worse than the screams. He stood, dusting his hands off. We need to get this to forensics. I took a shaky breath. Who lived here before? He exhaled through his nose, something shifting in his gaze. Not sure yet, but we'll find out. I didn't believe that for a second. Because even without knowing the name, without seeing a face, I felt the answer like a sickness in my bones. Whoever had lived here before, whoever had set up this recorder, they weren't done yet. The police took the recorder and left me standing there, staring at the empty apartment as if it might whisper its secrets if I listened hard enough. But the walls were silent now, waiting. My body felt wrong, like I had been hollowed out from the inside. I barely remembered walking back into my own apartment, barely registered locking the door, checking the windows, every instinct screaming at me that I was already trapped in something far bigger than I could understand. I sat on my couch, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to slow my breathing. My mind raced in circles, grasping for logic where there was none. A tape of me screaming, of me begging. A man's voice telling me no one could hear, but I was fine. I was right here. So what the hell was that recording? A warning? A threat? A premonition? I didn't sleep that night. I sat up, watching the shadows stretch across my floor, listening to every creak of the building settling. Every distant sound became something sinister. Every shift in the air sent ice down my spine. Then, just past 3 in the morning, a sound. Not screaming this time. Not knocking, just a single, soft, drawn-out breath, right outside my door. I knew I wasn't imagining it. Someone was there, standing in my hallway, waiting. I pressed my hand over my mouth, forcing myself not to make a sound, not to move. Then, a whisper, low, amused. "See you soon, Allison." I choked on a gasp, my heart slamming so hard against my ribs I thought it might break. They knew my name. I shot to my feet, my pulse roaring in my ears as I rushed toward the door. My hands fumbled with the locks, my panic making me clumsy. I yanked it open, stepping into the dim, flickering hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Empty. The hall stretched out in both directions, silent, still. But the air smelled wrong, chemical, sharp. And then I saw it, something small, left on my doormat, a cassette tape. I stared at it, nausea rolling through me in thick, suffocating waves. It was the same kind of tape they had taken from the apartment next door. I bent down, my fingers trembling as I picked it up. There was a single word written on the label in neat, deliberate handwriting. Tomorrow. I dropped it like it had burned me. My entire body screamed at me to run, to leave, to get out now. But I didn't move, because I knew deep down it didn't matter. No matter where I went, no matter what I did, tomorrow was coming. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The cassette tape sat on my kitchen counter untouched, but I could feel it, like a presence in the room, waiting for me to press play. The word, tomorrow, burned into my brain, a promise, a threat, an inevitability. I wanted to call the police, but what would I say? That someone had left me a tape? That I had heard a whisper outside my door? That my own screams from a future I hadn't lived yet had been recorded before they ever happened? They would dismiss me. They would tell me to lock my doors. Maybe. Suggest I stay with a friend. I had no friends. No family nearby. I was alone. And I was being hunted. By who? By what? I sat on my couch with my knees pulled to my chest, my phone in one hand, my kitchen knife in the other. The TV was on, the volume low, but I wasn't watching it. I was listening. To the walls, to the hallway, to every creak, every sigh of the old building, every shift in the air. Nothing, for now. Hours passed. The sun rose, painting long, cold shadows across my floor. The word, tomorrow, played on a loop in my mind. Well, tomorrow was here, and I had to know. I grabbed the tape. My fingers felt numb as I carried it to the old cassette player I kept in the back of my closet, a relic from childhood, something I had never used in years. I didn't even know if it worked. I placed the tape inside, pressed play static, then a long, slow breath. His breath, the same voice from the other tape, the one in the empty apartment, low, patient, amused. "It's time, Allison." Then my voice. "Please, please, let me go." I slammed stop. My body shook violently. I curled my fingers into my arms, trying to hold myself together. I wasn't going to run. Running wouldn't help. I wasn't going to hide. Hiding wouldn't save me. If I was going to die tonight, I was at least going to see his face first. I grabbed my keys, left the apartment, walked out into the too quiet hallway, every muscle coiled, ready. The air was heavy, stale. I turned to the apartment next door, the empty one, the should-be empty one. The door was open. Not much, just a crack, just wide enough to invite me inside. I swallowed the terror trying to choke me and stepped forward. My heart slammed in my ears as I reached out, fingers grazing the wood. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first, rotten, faintly metallic, the unmistakable scent of old blood. The apartment was no longer empty. A chair sat in the middle of the room. Straps dangled from the arms and legs. Dried rust-colored stains crusted the worn fabric, and there was something else. A table, a small plain table pushed against the far wall. A single object sat on it, a tape recorder. I knew what was on it. I knew who was on it. I didn't want to. Press play. but I had to. My fingers trembled as I pressed the button. The tape word clicked into place, and then, "Hello, Allison." His voice, calm, close. "I knew you'd come." A sound from behind me, a breath. I turned too late. The cord wrapped around my throat, yanking me back, crushing the scream before it could escape. I clawed at it, at the hands tightening behind me, but they were too strong. My body bucked against the pull, my vision going dark at the edges. I kicked. My heel connected with something solid, and there was a grunt of pain. The grip loosened just for a second, but I wrenched free, stumbling forward, gasping. My throat burned as I scrambled toward the door, my hands desperate for the knob. A hand slammed into the side of my head. Pain exploded through my skull. The floor rushed up to meet me. I tasted blood. The world tilted sideways, the room spinning in a sickening blur. Footsteps circled me, slow, deliberate. A shadow moved into view, and then I saw him, the man who had been waiting for me. He crouched down, head tilting slightly, studying me. His face was wrong, not because it was monstrous, but because it wasn't. He looked ordinary, like someone you'd pass on the street and never think twice about. And that was the worst part. The banality of it, the ease with which someone so normal could hide the kind of darkness that was in him. He smiled. "I wondered if you'd listen to the tape first," he mused. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Or if I'd have to send for you." My vision blurred. I tried to move, but my limbs felt disconnected, sluggish. The hit to my head. He'd planned that. Just enough force to keep me weak, not enough to kill me. Not yet. "Why?" I gasped, barely recognizing my own voice. "Who are you?" His expression didn't change. "You already know." And I did. I knew. This was his apartment, and it always had been. He stood stretching like this was just another night, another routine. "You've been listening to me for a long time," he said. "I figured it was only fair to return the favor." Then he knelt beside me, close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear. "And now," he whispered, "you'll know what it sounds like when you scream." The last thing I saw before everything went black was the recorder still running on the table, waiting to capture the sounds of what came next. They never found Allison Carter. The police investigated her disappearance, questioned, neighbors reviewed security footage, but no one had seen anything. The apartment next door was empty when they searched it. No tape. No blood. No chair. Nothing. Just silence. And then, a few weeks later, a new tenant moved in. A woman. Young. Alone. And late one night, she heard something. A sound through the walls. A scream. Faint. Muffled. Like it was trapped inside a recording, waiting to be heard.